Hi class, my name is Kate Freeman.
And I'm Gordon Johnson.
Our population that we chose to talk about are the individuals with intellectual and other developmental disabilities. So during the presentation, I would go over the reasons why we chose this population, advocacy and the Black perspective, common myths. Gordon will cut in and educate us on the definition of the individuals with intellectual disabilities, socio-demographic characteristics, history of treatment, general social work practice, and then I will come back in with the best practices and the conclusion of the presentation. So the individuals with intellectual and other developmental disabilities are looked at as the underdogs of society, but they're actually really smart. They are very inquisitive, very unique, and loving individuals, but they're often misrepresented, often discriminated against, alienated, and they're always viewed as abnormal compared to other individuals, and they're often dehumanized. Dehumanized meaning that their disability is the forefront that people see before the actual human being. Like they don't really take the time out to understand the individual. They just see that disability and decide that that's what they want to focus on. So this population is a marginalized population, often misrepresented, never really treated fairly, and their daily life living presents great challenges, like not being able to hold a job or be employed to start with. There's no respect when it comes to other people seeing these individuals or treating these individuals. Lack of inclusion and lack of dignified treatment. So there's a huge need for advocacy from others and social workers. So we decided to focus on social justice as one of the principles from the Black perspective. It promotes sensitivity and service to the oppressed population, which would be the individuals with the intellectual disabilities in our case today. They qualify because they are considered as an oppressed group. So social justice and the Black perspective helps to ensure equal treatment for these individuals. So common myths or beliefs that people have in their mind about this population is that they're hopeless, that they can't really do anything for themselves without the assistance from other people. They're unable to care for themselves. Like they're not really able to do personal hygiene things or just things that we would consider normal for ourselves. These individuals cannot do. They when it comes to having emotions or feelings, they're almost like they're nonchalant, and sometimes it has to do with their disability, and just not being able to like grasp that concept. But they do have feelings and they do have emotions. They're unable to learn or to hold any type of learning capability. They're unable to lead happy and fulfilling lives. Just people just think that they're just because of their disability that they're just there. They're just living. They don't really have any purpose for being here. And that they're unemployable and that they're all the same. Individuals with intellectual disabilities are not all the same. There are different types of disabilities, like being visually impaired. If you wear glasses, you're visually impaired. Hearing impairments, or just having some type of mental disorder would be considered having some type of intellectual disability. So these individuals are not all the same. So we gotta have to keep that in our minds.
Going off of what Kamer said about them not all being the same, let's first look at the definition of intellectual disability. Intellectual disability is characterized by significant limitations in both intellectual functioning and in adaptive behavior, which covers many everyday social and practical skills. Individuals possess significantly sub-average general and intellectual functioning. The onset of these characteristics is before the age of 18. and these individuals score significantly lower than average on standard intelligence tests. Next. Next, we look at some of the socio-demographic characteristics of the intellectually disabled population. The percentage of the percentage of those with all types of disabilities in the United States population rose from 11.9% to 12.6% in 2013 and 14. On a national level, the prevailing percentage of civilians with intellectual disabilities increased with age from 4.1% for ages 5 to 17 to 4.4% for ages 18 to 64, and then that jumps to 9.1% for ages 65 and older. All disability types, hearing, vision, cognitive, etc., they have increases in their disability percentage with increases in age. However, with intellectual disabilities, that has the least percentage of change between age groups. Next. Additional socio-demographic characteristics are employment. In the past, many people with intellectual disabilities were thought to not be able to produce real work in the real world. However, that has since changed as society has evolved. On the other hand, employment rates, they vary by type of disability. For instance, those with hearing impairment, they are employed at a 50% rate. Those with vision impairments or vision disabilities are employed at a 40% rate. But then those that are intellectually disabled are only employed at a 16% rate. So that's a significant drop when we look at other types of disabilities. 34% of all civilians with disability in the United States are employed versus 65% of those without disabilities. So it's almost double the amount of people who do not have disabilities, their employment status, as opposed to those who are disabled. In 2004, President Bush's Committee for People with Intellectual Disabilities studied employment status of the lowest intellectually functioning 3% of the U.S. population and found that almost 85% were unemployed or grossly underemployed. So what do we do about that? We have community centers called ARCs. ARC is an old term, an old acronym, and it stood for Association for Retarded Citizens. But anyway, their mission is to help individuals with intellectual disabilities to gain employment. Next, we move on to race. And according to the Office of Civil Rights data collection for 2012, minority students comprised 51.4% of intellectual disability labeled students, next to 49% of white students. When we look at specific learning disabilities, about 45% were minority and 55% were white. And then when we look at developmental delays, age groups, grades K through 9, 22% were minority students versus 61% white. So white students with developmental delays, grades K through 9, were triple that of minority students. When we look at some of the history of treatment of those with intellectual disabilities in the macro social environment, we look at past practices. In past practices, persons with intellectual disabilities, they were confined to institutions. Prior to the 60s, prior to the late 60s, the public policy was centered on individual pathology. And what I mean by that is public policy was centered on trying to fix the disability or solve it, as opposed to working with the individual with that disability, within the constraints of their disability, putting them in contact with the right resources and right helps to make them, perform optimally within their disability. There were significant changes in the 70s and 80s with the viewpoints and the perceptions of people with intellectual disabilities. And then we then came about such terms as normalization and deinstitutionalization. When we talk about deinstitutionalization, no longer were people put in these big, massive public mental health facilities. Um, Now there was a concentrating on putting them in more community-based, residential, smaller centers. And then when we look at normalization, it was that dealt with trying to make sure that these individuals had as close to normal an existence as people without intellectual disabilities. Next. Also, when we look at generalist social work practice with individuals with intellectual disabilities, we come across three terms: brokering, case management, and advocacy. Brokering is simply social workers linking clients with needed resources. Case management, as we know, involves organizing, creating, and maintaining a network of needed services, agencies, and resources. And then we come to advocacy, as we spoke about earlier, which is affecting or initiating change on behalf of these clients, obtaining services or resources for them, modifying or influencing existing policies, and promoting legislation or new policies.
So when we talk about best practices for empowering these group of people, it's just a matter of getting out there and actually doing the work. If we can't say that we're trying to empower the individual with intellectual disabilities without actually trying to understand what their disability is. So the first thing would be to try to educate yourself on their disability and also offer that same information to them in case they don't know, so that helps them. Having an open mind about the population. They're different type of people, so just trying to understand where they're coming from. Try to kind of put yourself in their position. Just trying to see how you can help them or how you would like to be helped if you had that disability. So education, being aware, trying to get support from the community, seeing if you can, as far as community resources, looking for like therapists or anyone in the community that could provide certain classes or just have groups about teaching life skills and job skills to these individuals, and even having other individuals that's been successful in life, having those individuals talk to the others, just saying that you can do this, encouraging them that they can actually succeed without all the bad things that come their way, really. So in conclusion, we just like to let everyone know that societal views and treatment has evolved over the last 50 years. We went from institutionalizing and isolating these individuals to normalizing and integrating these individuals into the mainstream society. So this works for the best interests of these individuals and their families. With the right support, and fair chance in life, they're able to succeed to their best of their ability. So a few takeaway items from our presentation would just to have an open mind, making sure that you understand or try to understand these individuals with the intellectual disabilities, trying to look for the best resources in the community to help them. Even reaching out to the government for assistance would be a good way of helping them, and always to encourage them that they are capable of doing anything that they put their minds to. So that's our presentation. If you have any questions, let us know. But I hope you guys enjoyed this presentation and took a few things from it. Thanks.
Thank you.